DISA build PDX, parens, Andrew Montgomery, says, do you ever find that people are intimidated by your creativity or process to the point where they don't feel comfortable working or collaborating with you? I am really, really, really frequently ignorant of people being intimidated by me. That is totally true. It rarely occurs to me, the intimidation factor. And it should more. Like, if I'm going to be empathetic, it's something that I should consider more, and I'm often surprised by. But I think when I'm standing in front of a person and talking about a collaboration, I don't think I've had anyone ever turn me down. I mean, I've certainly had people not want to collaborate or not be able to collaborate. And I've certainly had people who were uninterested in building something live on camera with me. That, like, to them, it was clear that that was like a high wire act and terrifying, which I completely get. Like, we all have our comfort zones. Yeah, it hasn't, I don't think it has, I think in general, around a maker, I am able to put the average maker in front of me at ease that we are two makers talking about the same thing. Yeah, in general, I think I'm actually pretty good at that. I think the reason people have turned down collaborations are either mostly from time or, like I said, being uncomfortable building open-ended on camera. I think there are some very famous people who find that idea like the third level of hell to them. Way too exposed to a certain extent. I really get that. All right. Pyromania2125 says, how do you get past the anxiety involved in starting a large project that you don't already possess all the skills needed to complete? There's two ways I start a large project where I don't necessarily feel qualified to carry it all the way across the line. One is enthusiasm and the other is anger. With enthusiasm, that's me just picturing the final result. I will say that when I started out trying to figure out how to make the ELF elevator panel, I was very clear that I was going to need a ton of help with the electronics. And I crept up on it. I really did creep up on it. I made lots of diagrams and lots of notes for months before I started calling Zach Radding and bringing him into the fray and then talking to Jeremy Williams, etc. So I do a lot of pre-production on stuff like that. I do a lot of pre-thinking. I make lists and I make lists of lists. And then I, like, somehow having 4 or 5 pages already filled with notes that are, you know, that I've been workshopping in terms of how this lays out, how I want it to go, the examples of how it could go. Having 4 or 5 pages of that is a great momentum towards actually starting a project. But in the case of, actually, so in the case of ELF, it was picturing the final product. In the case of my Hellboy Samaritan, to build the Hellboy Samaritan out of aluminum, which I did in the summer of 2020, I had been wanting to do that build for years. And I had been not doing it for years because I hadn't felt like I was a good enough machinist. And I started that still feeling like I wasn't a good enough machinist, but boy, did I need something to take over my mind because I was mourning the loss of a friend. And that's what got me moving forward on Samaritan. And I liked that mental holiday that the difficulty in executing the Samaritan gave me. In the case of my Captain Kirk's chair, it was anger. It was anger that got me to start that. I've always wanted a captain's chair. I've always known that there's a whole bunch of moving parts to get one of those to work. From an engineering standpoint, they are non-trivial. And I wasn't planning to build one. I found one on eBay that shipped to me from Washington, and it was only like a few $100. And when it arrived, it was so not correct I've told this story before. It was so not correct. I was angry for weeks. Not like angry at myself, not even angry at them, just like, it's not even wrong. And slowly, that anger becomes something that I polish, and eventually it's like, all right, I gotta make my own. I gotta chuck this and make my own. And I'm really delighted that the captain's chair that I didn't keep, I put it out front and it was gone in like 30 minutes. And the people who now have it know that it used to be mine, thanked me for it on social media. The story is a good one. But yeah, so I have 3 examples: enthusiasm, anger, and grief. Yeah. So going back to the making thing, going back to the why we make, going back to the magic of objects transforming on their own and transforming us, right? Like that's the other thing I was talking about creativity is like these objects that I have made over the course of my life, they change me. They change me over the years. And that whole thing of like processing grief by going to the workbench. Actually, honestly, the workbench is my preferred method of dealing with any large emotion because it localizes your areas of concern. It artificially reduces your world to the square that's in front of you. And that's very stabilizing. That's very regulating for me. I like to joke that the workbench is where I can pretend I have some measure of control over the world, but it's entirely accurate. The feeling I have of competence in my hands and the ability to make a thing in front of me is one of my favorite parts about being alive. And when I am experiencing a dysregulating large emotion, exercising that skill has allowed me to temper and process those emotions. There was something else I wanted to talk about. Oh. There we go. Ian Rigby says that they have recently found themselves saying Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy is a book in the Bible, but I accentuate the dude aspect of Deuteronomy because I'm from California. And several times Ian Rigby has also said this is non-trivial. I love the phrase non-trivial. Clearly, I watch too much Tested. Not possible. I was wondering if you had caught yourself adopting other people's expressions, particularly those that you admire or are close for. A couple of years ago, I was talking to somebody and they said to me, I was talking to them about a personal issue I was having. And we were conversing back and forth on it. And then they said, hey, you didn't ask for advice, but would you like some? And I thought, oh, that's really good. That's really good. Because I've gotten unsolicited advice from people that I didn't appreciate, and it's no fun. So the asking was really great. And I immediately adopted that into my roster of phrases that when I am talking to someone and I notice that they're telling me about an issue they're having with something, and I notice I have a point of view on it, I check with them before I exercise that. But you're talking also more about like idiomatic phrases. And the one that I say a lot these days that I didn't used to say is fair. When I say, why didn't you get the burrito? I said, I didn't want the blah, blah, blah. And I go, fair. Fair was not part of my speech 10 years ago. And I really feel like it's from the Aussies. The Aussies, like, the Australians have a phrase, they say, fair dinkum, fair dinkum, fair dinkum, which means genuine. That's like, a fair dinkum means that's a real reason. Sure, that's exactly right, fair dinkum. It comes from, I looked it up, Derbyshire and Lincolnshire. So I love the way the Aussies say fair dinkum. And I like fair is maybe it's a younger term, I don't know. But it wasn't in my mouth 10 years ago, and now I say it multiple times per day. And I really like the space it carves out of being like, yeah, that's exactly as that would go for me too, in a way, right? Like it's Yeah, fair is the most recent one. I will tell you, I know I've told this before, but I'll tell it again. When I was first dating my wife, I made a joke about exactly this. I was saying something like blah, 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 and I made air quotes, and it got a laugh. And I said we were dating. We weren't married yet, so this is like late 2003, and I said, thinking I'm being clever, I was thinking of changing my air quotes from the bent fingers to this one, right? So instead of this, doing that. And my partner said, oh, sans serif air quotes. Still one of the best jokes I have ever heard. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I wanted to briefly mention that you could become a tested member. I know, everybody is competing for you to become a member of their thing. What I want to express to you is that the Tested membership has become such an important part of the Tested family. We get tremendous feedback from the Tested members, and they expand the stories that we can tell and the things that we have access to. And you can become a part of it right now by clicking on the link below. See you in the chat.